Ethan, after 15 years with TechVintage, we're restructuring your position, Cynthia Holloway announced, her voice smooth, but with an undertone of finality that barely concealed a flicker of something else, perhaps satisfaction. She sat across the sterile conference table from me, flanked by Brenda Miller from HR. Both wore masks of carefully constructed corporate regret, the kind practiced in front of mirrors. The air conditioning hummed, adding a chill to the already cold room. "The company is moving in a new strategic direction, Mr. Vance," Brenda added, her tone purely procedural as she slid a thick manila folder across the polished surface toward me. It stopped inches from my hand. "Your contributions over the years have certainly been valuable," Cynthia continued, picking up the thread seamlessly. "But we're consolidating the core research division under the product development team to streamline innovation. Streamline innovation by cutting its heart out," I thought wryly. I gave a slow, thoughtful nod, meeting Cynthia's gaze before picking up the folder. I didn't open it. I already knew its contents intimately, even without looking. Inside would be the standard severance package, calculated with impersonal precision. 2 weeks' pay for every year of service, a meager acknowledgement of a decade and a half, continued health coverage for a scant 3 months, a terrifyingly short bridge in the American healthcare landscape, and, of course, a list of outplacement and career counseling resources I had absolutely no intention of ever using. There were box-checking exercises, nothing more. "I completely understand," I replied, keeping my voice perfectly steady, betraying none of the simmering resentment beneath the surface. Years of navigating corporate politics had taught me the value of a calm facade. These strategic decisions are never easy, I know. A wave of visible relief washed over both their faces. It was almost comical. They'd clearly braced themselves for an outburst. Tears, maybe, or shouting, bitter accusations, perhaps even threats of legal action. After all, I was a 55-year-old man being unceremoniously pushed out of the tech industry, a world increasingly obsessed with youth, often prizing perceived agility over proven experience. The quiet prejudice against older engineers was a constant, grinding reality I'd felt for years. What Cynthia and Brenda, in their carefully orchestrated performance, couldn't know, was that I had seen this coming. I had anticipated this exact moment, this very conversation, for weeks. Ever since that misdirected email thread, a careless digital breadcrumb trail, had landed in my inbox last month, revealing the whispers and plans that led directly to this cold, sterile room. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say. "We'd appreciate it if you could clear out your desk by the end of the day Friday," Cynthia continued, her confidence visibly bolstered by my unexpected, almost unnerving, acceptance. The practiced sympathy was fading, replaced by brisk efficiency. "We will, of course, need your keycard, company-issued laptop, and phone before you leave the premises. Naturally. And your team, well, your team will be notified later this afternoon about the changes." My team. The word stung more than the dismissal itself. 6 brilliant, dedicated engineers, each one hand-picked by me, mentored, guided, their potential carefully nurtured over the years. We weren't just colleagues. We were a unit, a finely tuned machine. The very same team that had worked alongside me, pouring countless late nights and weekends into developing the distributed processing algorithm, my algorithm, that now formed the bedrock of TechVintage's flagship product, AccountSphere, the accounting software suite used, ironically, by over 40% of the Fortune 500 companies, generating the very revenue that paid Cynthia's salary. "Of course," I said again, the politeness a weapon now. I rose slowly from my chair, towering slightly over them. "Is there anything else?" My composure seemed to throw them off balance. They exchanged uncertain glances, a silent question passing between them. Had they missed something? Was it really this easy? Cynthia recovered first, smoothing her expression back into professional neutrality. "No, Mr. Vance. That's all for now. Thank you for handling this professionally." The implication hung in the air. "Thank you for not making a scene." As I walked the long corridor back towards my office, the familiar path suddenly feeling alien. I passed the large, glass-walled conference room where the executive team was deep in discussion. Through the transparent barrier, I could see CEO Arthur Sterling gesturing emphatically at a PowerPoint slide titled Q3 Revenue Projections, Exceeding Expectations. My algorithm's expectations, I noted silently. The same Arthur Sterling who, at last year's major industry conference, had proudly presented my algorithm's success metrics, basking in the applause while vaguely referring to its creator only as one of our dedicated research team members. He never even used my name. The erasure had been deliberate, a calculated move to absorb my achievement into the corporate entity personified by him. I reached my office and closed the door firmly behind me, the click echoing in the sudden silence. The space felt different already, temporary. I pulled out my personal phone, ignoring the company-issued device on the desk, and typed a brief, coded text message. "It's happening. Friday is my last day." The reply flashed back almost instantaneously. "Perfect timing. Contracts are drafted and ready for signature. Dinner tonight to finalize all the details. Usual place." A slow, genuine smile finally touched my lips as I glanced at the calendar on my desk. Today was Wednesday. Friday, I would walk out of TechVantage HQ for the last time, leaving behind 15 years of my professional life. And Monday? Monday morning was going to be absolutely fascinating. That evening, I met Marcus Thorne at Meridian, an exclusive, members-only restaurant nestled discreetly downtown, miles away from the TechVantage campus and prying eyes. As the sharp, forward-thinking CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's largest and most innovative competitor, Marcus understood the paramount importance of discretion. He also, crucially, understood the true value of groundbreaking technology. He'd secured a private dining alcove in the rear of the restaurant, shielded from view by elegant, dark wood screens, ensuring our conversation remained confidential. The low lighting and hushed tones of the establishment contrasted sharply with the high stakes of our discussion. "They actually went through with it," Marcus said, shaking his head slightly in disbelief after the waiter had taken our orders and retreated. He leaned forward, his expression a mixture of incredulity and strategic satisfaction. I suspected Arthur might be foolish enough, but to cut loose the very engineer, the architect, who developed their core technology. It's corporate malpractice on an epic scale. Arthur Sterling never truly understood what I created, I replied, taking a slow sip of water, savoring the coolness. He saw the polished implementation, the user interface, the flashy marketing potential, sure. But the underlying architecture? The intricate mathematical models? The sheer efficiency gains? I paused, letting the words hang in the air. That was always just tech stuff to him. Necessary, perhaps, but ultimately replaceable in his mind. Just cogs in his machine. The irony of the situation was almost too perfect to be believed. 3 months ago, a casual follow-up had led me to a startling discovery. The patent application for my distributed processing algorithm, the one I'd painstakingly documented for TechVantage's legal team years ago, had never actually been filed. An administrative oversight, they'd claimed when I pressed them, their reassurances sounding hollow even then. They promised they'd expedite it immediately. But something about their casual dismissal, the lack of genuine urgency, had set off alarm bells. A deep-seated unease prompted me to dig deeper into the company's internal documentation systems during my off hours. That's when I found it, buried layers deep, a confidential strategy memo. It explicitly outlined plans to claim the algorithm as company-developed technology, intentionally omitting specific inventor attribution. My attribution. Their plan was clear. Push me out, sever the connection, before securing the patent under the company's name, leveraging the standard clause that intellectual property developed by employees typically belonged to the company. They were trying to steal my life's work under the guise of corporate restructuring. What Arthur Sterling and his compliant executives at TechVantage didn't know, what they couldn't possibly fathom, was that I hadn't been idle. For the past year, anticipating just such a betrayal, I had been meticulously working on significant refinements and enhancements to the algorithm. entirely on my own time, using my own high-performance personal equipment at home. These weren't minor tweaks. They were substantial improvements, documented with obsessive care, which dramatically increased processing efficiency by a staggering 43%. Crucially, this new work fell squarely outside the scope of my TechVantage employment agreement. Armed with this knowledge and irrefutable proof, I had quietly, meticulously filed for a patent under my own name last month. The application was supported by exhaustive documentation, detailed development logs, precise timestamps, hardware serial numbers, all demonstrating unequivocally that the advancements were conceived and executed outside of company time and resources. Thanks to Marcus's swift introduction to a top-tier intellectual property attorney, a specialist known for navigating complex cases, the patent had been granted with remarkable, almost unprecedented speed. It was now legally mine, ironclad. "All the paperwork is finalized, Ethan," Marcus said now, his voice resonating with quiet confidence as he slid a sleek, leather-bound folder across the polished mahogany table. It felt heavy, substantial. "As soon as you put your signature on these pages, Precision Systems officially acquires exclusive licensing rights to your patent. The enhanced version, naturally." He paused, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "The press release is scheduled. It goes live at precisely 7 a.m. Monday morning. It will announce you, Dr. Ethan Vance, as our new Chief Innovation Officer." I opened the folder and reviewed the documents carefully, though I had already gone over the drafts multiple times with the attorneys. The key terms were etched in my memory: a 7-figure signing bonus, substantial equity vesting over 3 years in Precision Systems, and, most importantly, ongoing, generous royalties derived from all products utilizing my patented algorithm. It was validation in contractual form. "What do you imagine Arthur's face will look like?" Marcus mused, unable to completely hide his satisfaction at the impending corporate drama, "when he realizes TechVantage's crown jewel now belongs to us, and its creator is leading our innovation." A grim thought, but my focus was elsewhere. "I'm more concerned about my team, Marcus," I admitted, the responsibility weighing on me. "Javier, Priya, all of them. They poured their hearts into that work too, under my direction. They don't deserve to be collateral damage in this fallout." Marcus nodded immediately, his expression serious. "Already addressed, Ethan. Consider it done." He tapped the folder. "We have attractive offers prepared for all 6 of them, should they choose to join you here. Senior engineering roles, significant raises over their TechVantage compensation, and positions within your new innovation division. They'll report directly to you." Relief flooded through me. Protecting them had been a non-negotiable part of my plan. With a steady hand, I picked up the offered pen, its weight reassuring, and signed the final page with a flourish. I closed the folder with a soft, decisive click. In one calculated, elegant move, executed under the noses of those who had underestimated and disrespected me, I had secured my own future, safeguarded the careers of my loyal team, and finally ensured the recognition and reward for my intellectual creation. Marcus raised his water glass, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. "To new beginnings, Ethan," he said, his voice holding a note of genuine respect. "And to owning your own value," I added, clinking my glass against his. The sound resonated softly in the quiet alcove. Thursday and Friday at TechVantage passed in a surreal blur of forced smiles, bureaucratic exit interviews, and meticulously documented knowledge transfer meetings. I had to walk a fine line, appearing cooperative while ensuring every interaction, every handover document, served my larger purpose. I maintained my professional composure throughout, a mask of calm helpfulness, even as the rumor mill churned through the office corridors with speculation about my sudden departure. Why would they let Vance go? What happened? Administrative assistants offered sympathetic, knowing glances as I passed them in the hallways. They always knew the real score. Junior developers, bless their naive hearts, approached me awkwardly during coffee breaks, tentatively asking if I'd be willing to provide LinkedIn recommendations before I left the industry. Left the industry? If only they knew. I documented everything with painstaking, almost obsessive meticulousness. Every active project status, every crucial password securely. Of course, every intricate process my team and I had established. I knew with absolute certainty that TechVantage would soon discover just how desperately thorough they needed me to have been. My decision to leave behind such comprehensive transition notes wasn't driven by lingering kindness or misplaced loyalty. It was strategic. It was evidence. Undeniable proof that I had acted in good faith, fulfilling my obligations to the letter, even as the company maneuvered deceitfully behind my back. Let them discover the gaps later. During my final exit interview on Friday afternoon, seated once again across from Brenda Miller in that same soulless conference room, she went through the standard HR checklist with the mechanical efficiency of a robot. Each item was ticked off with a precise flick of her pen. "Mr. Vance, you understand and acknowledge," she stated, her voice devoid of inflection as she pushed a standard non-disclosure agreement across the table towards me, "that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the sole property of TechVantage." "Of course, Brenda," I replied pleasantly, meeting her gaze directly. I picked up the NDA but didn't sign it immediately. Anything developed within the defined scope of my employment contract, utilizing company resources during company time. I understand those terms perfectly. I emphasized each qualifier subtly, distinctly. But Brenda, focused solely on completing her checklist, processing me out, didn't seem to notice the careful delineation. She just wanted this uncomfortable task over with. "And," she continued, glancing down at her form, "you affirm that you retain no copies, physical or digital, of proprietary company information or data." "I have taken absolutely nothing that belongs to TechVantage," I confirmed truthfully. "The enhanced algorithm, the patent, those were unequivocally mine, developed and secured outside the bounds of my employment." My conscience was clear. The relevant patent, after all, is my own. That last part was murmured almost to myself, but loud enough to be potentially recalled later, if necessary. As I methodically packed the few personal items from my desk later that afternoon, framed family photos that had watched over years of code, a collection of conference badges marking 15 years of industry events and advancements, the slightly chipped coffee mug my team had given me last Christmas, inscribed "Codefather." Cynthia Holloway appeared, leaning against my doorframe with an air of forced casualness. Her presence felt intrusive now. "Ethan, just wanted to personally check that everything is clear for your departure," she said, her eyes scanning the contents of the cardboard box I was filling. A box that felt insultingly small for 15 years of dedication. "Crystal clear, Cynthia," I replied smoothly, carefully wrapping a small, elegant glass award I'd received internally a few years prior, for the very algorithm now at the explosive center of my meticulously laid plans. The irony wasn't lost on me as I carefully nestled it between layers of protective tissue paper, a monument to their short-sightedness. "You know, Ethan," Cynthia continued, adopting a confidential tone that grated on my nerves, "these restructuring decisions, they're never personal. Arthur just feels, well, he strongly feels the company needs to move in a more youthful, dynamic direction. Fresh perspectives. The ageism, thinly veiled as strategy, was insulting." I looked up from my packing, meeting her gaze directly, letting a flicker of my true feelings, cold anger, show for the briefest moment. "I understand completely, Cynthia." My voice was flat, devoid of the expected resentment or disappointment. Business is business, after all. Something in my tone, perhaps the utter lack of expected emotion, made her pause. For a fleeting second, a flicker of uncertainty, maybe even unease, crossed her usually composed face, but she quickly dismissed it, her corporate mask sliding back into place. What could he possibly do? A soon-to-be unemployed 55-year-old engineer? The thought was likely dismissed as quickly as it arose. He's yesterday's news. "So, will you be taking some time off now?" she asked, injecting a note of artificial concern into her voice. "Perhaps some travel?" "Actually," I replied, allowing myself a small, enigmatic smile, I already have something exciting lined up. Quite exciting, in fact. Oh, genuine surprise registered on her features this time. That wasn't in the script. That was. Asked, anything interesting? Her curiosity seemed piqued despite herself. I paused, savoring the moment. Very interesting, I confirmed, keeping my tone light. A significant leadership position, actually. Cutting-edge work. I let my gaze drift towards the window as if contemplating a bright future. I'm quite excited about it. Starts Monday, bright and early. She nodded absently, already mentally checking out, her part in my exit complete. Her mind was likely already moving on to other, more pressing matters, like how to redistribute my workload among the remaining, likely younger and cheaper staff. Well, she offered perfunctorily, turning to leave. Good luck with that then. As I walked out of TechVintage's imposing glass and steel headquarters for the final time later that afternoon, my surrendered keycard feeling strangely light in my pocket, the cardboard box of my professional past tucked under my arm, I allowed myself a brief moment. I stopped on the sidewalk and looked back up at the building where I had invested 15 years of my career, my intellect, my passion. 15 years. On the top floor, the executive conference room was brightly lit against the darkening evening sky. They were likely gathered there right now, Arthur, Cynthia, and the others, discussing the smooth transition, strategizing how to divide my responsibilities among less experienced and significantly less expensive engineers, reassuring themselves they'd made a smart financial decision. Little did they know, as they congratulated themselves on their cost-saving maneuver, that in less than 72 hours, that very same opulent conference room would be the frantic epicenter of an emergency crisis meeting, fueled by panic and disbelief. Their carefully planned, youthful direction was about to hit a very expensive, very adult roadblock. My roadblock. Monday morning dawned bright, clear, and full of potential. The California sun promised a beautiful day. I dressed with deliberate care, selecting the new charcoal gray bespoke suit I'd purchased specifically for this occasion. It felt less like clothing and more like armor, a statement of intent, a power outfit for a power move. The Precision Systems town car, a sleek black sedan, arrived precisely at 7:30 a.m. as arranged. The short drive to their modern, sprawling headquarters in Palo Alto felt like crossing into a new era. This wasn't just a new job, it was the beginning of my vindication. I was ready to step into my new role, Chief Innovation Officer. The meticulously crafted press release went live at exactly 7 a.m. Pacific Time. Marcus Thorne informed me personally as I settled into my new corner office, a spacious, light-filled room with stunning floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the valley. A stark contrast to the functional, but decidedly less impressive, space I'd occupied at TechVintage. It's out there, Ethan, Marcus confirmed, handing me a tablet already displaying several tech news feeds. Industry newsletters, major tech journals, even the financial wires are already picking it up. The buzz is starting. He grinned, a spark of competitive fire in his eyes. I've got our entire communications team monitoring reactions and fielding inquiries. This is going to make waves. The announcement had been composed with surgical precision, every word carefully chosen for maximum impact. The headline blared, Precision Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary processing algorithm, welcomes creator Ethan Vance as Chief Innovation Officer. It went on to detail my extensive background and doctoral credentials, unequivocally emphasizing my role as the sole inventor of the now patented technology. It outlined Precision Systems' ambitious plans to integrate the algorithm, my algorithm, into their next generation of enterprise software products, promising unprecedented performance gains. And then, the crucial payload. It clearly, unambiguously stated that any company currently utilizing the technology read, TechVintage and its flagship AccountSphere would need to immediately negotiate licensing agreements directly with Precision Systems to continue its use legally. Gauntlet had been thrown down. At precisely 9:15 a.m., my personal phone, the one TechVintage had no access to, lit up with the first incoming text message from my former team. It was from Javier Rossi, my sharp lead developer, a man I trusted implicitly. Complete chaos here during our events. The capital letters conveyed the panic. What did you do? A slow smile spread across my face. The first tremors were hitting. I quickly typed back a calm reply. Check your personal email, Javier. All 6 of you have offers waiting. Your expertise is valued elsewhere. Meanwhile, just 8 miles away at the gleaming TechVantage headquarters, the scheduled Monday morning executive leadership meeting was undergoing a swift, dramatic, and entirely unforeseen transformation. According to Javier's subsequent breathless, play-by-play text updates throughout the chaotic morning, Arthur Sterling had arrived at the office around 8:30 a.m., expecting a routine start to the week. Instead, he found the company's general counsel and the chief financial officer waiting grimly outside his office door, both reportedly looking pale and ashen-faced, clutching printouts of the Precision Systems press release. The industry announcement, strategically timed for maximum disruption, had simultaneously hit their executive inboxes and every major tech news outlet just as the workday began on the West Coast, setting off immediate, blaring alarms throughout the C-suite. By 9:30 a.m., what should have been a standard, coffee-fueled review of weekly targets had morphed into a full-blown, emergency crisis session. Board members were being hastily dialed in remotely, their voices crackling with urgent questions over the speakerphone. The legal team, caught completely flat-footed, was frantically scrambling, pulling my old employment contract, NDAs, project files, anything and everything related to the algorithm's development history. They're pulling every file with your name on it, Dory, Javier reported in another text, timestamped 9:48 a.m. Security just wheeled in all the old servers from the research division for the tech forensics team to analyze. People are freaking out. I could picture the scene perfectly. Arthur Sterling, red-faced and sputtering, pacing the length of the luxurious conference room, demanding impossible answers from a shell-shocked Cynthia Holloway and the increasingly flustered legal department. How could this happen? Who dropped the ball? Heads would roll, he was likely bellowing. Outside the glass walls, the stock ticker would already be reacting negatively to the news. Investors despise uncertainty and the whiff of scandal, and our announcement had just delivered a megadose of both directly into TechVantage's ecosystem. At 10:45 a.m., a new email notification popped up on my phone. It was from Arthur Sterling himself. The subject line simply read, "Urgent discussion." The message body reeked of poorly concealed desperation, a stark contrast to the dismissive tone of just days ago. "Ethan," it began, dispensing with the formal Mr. Vance used in my dismissal. "There appears to be a significant misunderstanding regarding recent developments reported in the press this morning concerning intellectual property. Please call my direct line at your absolute earliest convenience to discuss this critical matter." I read it once, a grim sense of satisfaction washing over me. Misunderstanding? Oh, I understood perfectly. Without replying, I simply forwarded the entire email to the Precision Systems legal team with a one-word note, FYI. Let the lawyers handle the panicked outreach. By noon, the tech industry was buzzing. Tech blogs, financial news sites, even mainstream business publications were dissecting the situation. TechVantage's stock had already plummeted a painful 7% since the market opened, wiping out millions in shareholder value. Conversely, Precision Systems stock had surged, up an impressive 12%, fueled by the news of acquiring both my technology and me. 3 different prominent technology journals had already sent urgent interview requests to Precision Systems' PR department, wanting to speak with me about the strategic coup and the patent bombshell that had violently shaken the foundations of the lucrative accounting software industry. "So, how are you feeling, Dr. Vance?" Marcus Thorne asked, stopping by my gleaming new office as I was beginning to unpack the few items I'd brought. He leaned against the doorframe, looking thoroughly pleased. "Validated, Marcus," I replied honestly, meeting his gaze. The feeling was potent, intoxicating, deeply validated. 15 long years of watching others, often less capable men like Arthur, take credit for my innovations. 15 years of being patted on the head, told I should just be grateful to have a seat at the table, despite my contributions clearly driving profits. 15 years of quiet frustration simmering beneath a professional exterior. And now, finally, indisputable recognition on my own terms. Just then, my new executive assistant, a sharp young woman named Chloe, appeared discreetly at the door. "Door Vance," she addressed me formally, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "The core development team is assembled and ready for your introductory meeting in the main conference room." She hesitated for a fraction of a second. "And sir, TechVantage's CEO, Mr. Sterling? He has called your temporary line 4 times in the last hour alone. His assistant says it's extremely urgent." I felt a surge of power, calm and controlled. "Please let Mr. Sterling's office know I'm in back-to-back meetings all day, Chloe," I replied calmly, my voice even. "Inform them that our legal team at Precision Systems will be reaching out to their general counsel later this week to discuss potential licensing options for the patented technology." As I walked down the wide, bright hallway towards my first official meeting as Chief Innovation Officer of Precision Systems, ready to outline my vision for the future, my phone buzzed again in my pocket. Another update from Javier. "Board just called an emergency closed session. Arthur looks like he's physically about to explode." Saw him yelling at Cynthia in the hall. A beat later, another message popped up. "P.S. My team and I gratefully accept your incredible offer. All 6 of us. When can we start?" I smiled. Phase 2 was firmly underway. By Tuesday morning, the full, devastating impact of my departure and the patent revelation had become starkly, undeniably clear to everyone within the increasingly panicked walls of TechVantage. Their flagship product, the cash cow AccountSphere, the software suite responsible for the lion's share of their revenue, relied entirely on my proprietary algorithm to process the massive, complex datasets that gave it a crucial competitive edge. It wasn't just a feature. It was the engine. Without the legal right to use my now patented enhancements, and facing the prospect of infringement lawsuits if they continued using the older version derived from my original work, TechVantage faced 2 equally unpalatable, potentially company-killing options. Option A, negotiate a licensing deal with Precision Systems, their fiercest competitor, likely at exorbitant, punitive rates dictated by us, and publicly acknowledge my role, swallowing immense corporate pride. Option B, attempt to rebuild their core technology from the ground up, completely avoiding any element covered by my patent. A monumental undertaking that industry experts estimated would take years, cost tens of millions in R&D, and likely result in an inferior product, all while Precision Systems surged ahead with the genuine article. Checkmate. Arthur has called a mandatory, all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. today. Javier texted me late Tuesday morning. It was his last official day at TechVantage. He and the rest of my former team were scheduled to start orientation at Precision Systems the following Monday. The brain drain was about to become a torrent. Rumor flying around is they're going to try and sue you personally. Desperation move. I calmly forwarded Javier's message to our internal legal department. The response from Precision's chief counsel came back almost immediately. "Let them try. Your documentation is impeccable, Dr. Vance. Development logs, timestamps, proof of personal equipment usage, all clearly established and legally vetted before we moved forward. We anticipated this exact scenario and are fully prepared to vigorously defend your position and ours. They have no legitimate case." The confidence was reassuring. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new role at Precision Systems with remarkable, almost seamless ease. The atmosphere here was fundamentally different. The respect I received from Marcus, the board, and the engineering teams was a refreshing, stark contrast to the subtle and sometimes not so subtle condescension and political maneuvering I had endured during my final years at TechVantage. When I spoke in meetings here, people actually listened. My ideas weren't ignored, only to be repackaged 5 minutes later by a younger, smoother talking colleague and presented as their own brilliant insight. Here, my age and decades of experience were genuinely viewed as assets, as deep wells of knowledge, rather than liabilities or indicators of being out of touch. The coded language often used to sideline older tech professionals. The engineering team is already implementing your efficiency improvements into our beta platform. Marcus informed me during our afternoon strategic briefing, looking genuinely impressed. Early benchmark testing shows a 51% performance boost. Ethan, that's even better than the 43% improvement stated in your patent filing. How? I had several additional architectural refinements I developed after the patent was filed, I admitted with a slight smile. Further optimizations I never shared with TechVantage, naturally. After I discovered their clandestine plans to eliminate my position and essentially steal my work, I saw absolutely no reason to give them my very best, most current innovations. Why cast pearls before swine? Their profound loss, our exponential gain, Marcus replied, leaning back in his chair with a deeply satisfied smile. Speaking of gains, the first licensing inquiry for your algorithm came in this morning. Not from TechVantage yet. Of course, Arthur's pride is probably still keeping them in denial. But from Dataflow Systems, a major player in the analytics space. They use a component that might brush up against your patent, and they're clearly worried about being caught in the legal crossfire between us and TechVantage. The ripple effects were spreading. At 3:30 p.m. that afternoon, Javier sent a detailed, almost minute-by-minute account of Arthur Sterling's disastrous all-hands meeting. According to Javier, the CEO had attempted to project an image of unwavering confidence, bluffing his way through, assuring the anxious staff that TechVantage would vigorously defend our proprietary technology and that the situation was merely a competitive tactic by Precision Systems. But the anxiety in the packed auditorium had been palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Questions were met with vague non-answers. Several employees, reading the writing on the wall, had apparently already updated their LinkedIn profiles during the meeting itself, signaling their intention to jump ship. Cynthia Holloway looked like she was about to genuinely faint, Javier reported, when someone from finance directly asked if management had actually failed to secure the patent on the core account sphere algorithm. Arthur abruptly cut the queue in a session short right after that. The cracks in the facade were rapidly widening into chasms. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified significantly. Two of TechVantage's major, long-term clients, large corporations heavily reliant on AccountSphere, had contacted Precision Systems' sales division directly, expressing serious concerns about TechVantage's ability to maintain and support the product moving forward without its original architect and the looming patent infringement issue. They were proactively exploring migration options to our platform. Our stock reflected the growing confidence, rising another solid 8%. TechVantage's, meanwhile, continued its sickening downward slide, hemorrhaging value. Mid-morning, I received an unexpected direct call. The caller ID showed TechVantage's main number, but the voice was instantly recognizable. Brenda Miller, the same HR representative who had impassively slid my severance package across the table just 5 days earlier. Her tone was markedly different now, still carefully professional, but laced with an undercurrent of strained diplomacy. "Ethan, Mr. Vance," she began, correcting herself quickly. "I'm calling today on behalf of TechVantage leadership to discuss the ongoing situation regarding your recently issued patent." She cleared her throat. The company believes there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the ownership rights of the intellectual property in question." "I don't believe there's any misunderstanding whatsoever, Brenda," I replied calmly, keeping my voice cool and measured. "Let her feel the shift in power. My employment agreement, which I'm sure your legal team has reviewed thoroughly by now, clearly stipulates that intellectual property developed entirely on my own time, using my own personal resources, remains my personal property. The patent documentation, including exhaustive development logs and timestamps, confirms precisely that beyond any doubt." I let the silence hang for a moment. "Well," Brenda continued, sounding flustered, "Mr. Sterling, Arthur was hoping you might reconsider and perhaps be willing to come in informally. to discuss possible options, a potential resolution. Any discussions regarding the licensing of my patented technology will need to go through the official channels now, Brenda. I responded firmly, cutting her off politely but decisively. Specifically, through Precision Systems' legal department. I am no longer an employee of TechVantage. However, I added, twisting the knife just slightly, I'm quite sure our legal team would be happy to schedule a formal meeting with TechVantage's counsel to discuss appropriate licensing terms at their earliest convenience. The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. I could almost hear the wheels turning, the dawning realization of just how badly they had miscalculated. Finally, Brenda sighed audibly, a sound of defeat. I see. I will pass that information along to Mr. Sterling and the legal team. The call ended abruptly. That afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to the Precision Systems Board of Directors. Standing confidently at the head of the long, polished table in the executive boardroom, a position of prominence I was never afforded at TechVantage, where I was usually relegated to a seat against the wall, called upon only to answer technical questions. I outlined our ambitious technology roadmap, with my newly licensed algorithm positioned firmly at its core. As I detailed the planned enhancements and the projected market disruption, I caught Marcus Thorne's approving nod from across the table. This was where I belonged. By Friday, exactly 1 week after I had walked out of TechVantage for the last time, carrying my small box of belongings, the company had descended into full-blown crisis mode. Their stock had cratered, down a staggering 23% from Monday's opening bell, erasing nearly a quarter of the company's market capitalization in just 5 days. The precipitous drop triggered panicked calls from major institutional investors and activist shareholders demanding answers and accountability. Industry analysts, smelling blood in the water, were publishing speculative, vulture-esque pieces with ominous titles like, "Can TechVantage survive the algorithm crisis?" and "Hubris and Patents. How one strategic blunder may cost a tech giant everything." The narrative was rapidly shifting from a mere setback to an existential threat. Through my own carefully cultivated industry contacts, I learned that Arthur Sterling, facing immense pressure, had finally been forced to acknowledge the true severity of the situation to the board of directors in a closed-door emergency session. The stark reality was unavoidable. TechVantage would either have to license my algorithm from Precision Systems, their arch-rival, likely at exorbitant, profit-crushing rates designed to inflict maximum pain and publicly admit their failure, or undertake a massively expensive, time-consuming, and technically daunting complete rebuild of AccountSphere's core engine, fundamentally gutting their flagship product while trying to avoid infringing on any aspect of my broadly defined patent. A Herculean task with no guarantee of success. They've started posting job recs and interviewing for a completely new core development team, Javier informed me during our Friday afternoon video call, where we were finalizing the logistics for his and the team's onboarding at Precision Systems the following week. Get this, Arthur is actually claiming internally they can recreate the full functionality from scratch in 6 months. I couldn't help but let out a short, sharp laugh. The sheer absurdity was breathtaking. The original algorithm, in its less refined state, took me nearly 3 years of intense, focused work to perfect, and that was with an intimate, unparalleled understanding of the complex problem space. 6 months? It was pure fantasy, a desperate bluff. Exactly, Javier agreed, rolling his eyes. Nobody in engineering is buying the timeline for a second. Morale is in the absolute toilet, especially after our entire core team posted their resignation letters simultaneously yesterday afternoon. The knowledge drain is massive. They're losing decades of institutional knowledge overnight. Late that Friday afternoon, the inevitable finally happened. TechVantage's external legal counsel formally reached out to Precision Systems' legal department to officially open a dialogue about potential licensing arrangements for my patent. Our legal team, meticulously following the aggressive strategy Marcus and I had developed, responded promptly with terms that were, on the surface, technically fair market value, but strategically designed to be excruciatingly painful for TechVantage's bottom line and Arthur Sterling's ego. The demand: 3 times the standard industry licensing rate for technology of comparable impact, reflecting the premium nature and market-proven success of the algorithm. Plus, a non-negotiable clause requiring a prominent public acknowledgement, issued by TechVantage's CEO, recognizing Ethan Vance as the sole inventor of the core technology powering AccountSphere. They'll balk at the public acknowledgement even more than the cost, Marcus predicted shrewdly as we reviewed the drafted response in his office before it was sent. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, looking contemplative. Arthur Sterling's monumental ego simply won't allow him to publicly admit that he not only failed to secure the company's most valuable asset, but that he actively pushed out the very person who created it. He'd rather burn the company to the ground. Then they'll have no choice but to attempt the rebuild, I replied calmly, feeling a cold certainty settle over me. And every single day, every dollar they spend trying fruitlessly to replicate my work, is another day we extend our technological lead and capture more of their market share. Let them try. The following Monday morning, just 10 days after my unceremonious dismissal from TechVantage, felt like the true beginning. I led the first official meeting of my newly assembled innovation team at Precision Systems. Gathered around the large table in a state-of-the-art collaboration space were Javier Rossi, Priya Sharma, and the other 4 brilliant engineers who had formed the core of my former team at TechVantage. They had all started that morning, their relief and enthusiasm palpable. The energy in the room was electric, a stark contrast to the strained, politically charged atmosphere we had endured for so long. We immediately dove into mapping out the next evolution of my algorithm, brainstorming enhancements and new applications. Ideas flowed freely, respectfully challenged, and collaboratively refined. "Wow," commented Priya Sharma, leaning back in her chair midway through the session, a look of genuine appreciation on her face. This is how development meetings should be. Productive, focused, respectful. At TechVantage, we spent half our time just trying to explain basic technical concepts to executives like Cynthia who wouldn't listen anyway, or fighting political battles. "That's the fundamental difference, Priya," I replied, looking around at the faces of my valued team, between being genuinely valued for your expertise and being seen as merely a replaceable, aging cog in a machine. Here, your skills, your experience, your contributions, they are recognized and rewarded. That's the culture Marcus is building, and it's the culture we will foster in this division. As we were wrapping up the incredibly productive 3-hour session, already outlining concrete next steps, my assistant Chloe appeared discreetly at the door again, this time holding a tablet displaying a breaking news alert. "Dr. Vance," she interrupted apologetically, her eyes wide with the significance of the news. "There's been a major, significant development with TechVantage just announced." She took a breath. Their board of directors just announced an emergency leadership change, effective immediately. She paused for dramatic effect. "Arthur Sterling is stepping down as CEO." A stunned silence fell over the room for a moment, followed by a low murmur of disbelief and then, undeniably, satisfaction. The news spread through the tech industry like wildfire. Within hours, major financial news outlets and tech publications were reporting that TechVantage's board had abruptly lost confidence in Arthur Sterling's leadership, citing the catastrophic patent oversight and the subsequent handling of the crisis that now threatened the company's flagship product and its very future. The reports also confirmed that Cynthia Holloway was out as well, along with the head of legal who had ultimately failed to properly secure the patent filings years ago. The purge was swift and brutal, the price of arrogance and incompetence. That evening, reflecting on the day's dramatic events, I received an unexpected email. It wasn't from the disgraced Arthur Sterling, nor the ineffective Cynthia Holloway. The sender was Lawrence Bishop, TechVantage's newly appointed interim CEO, a respected industry veteran known for his turnaround expertise. Unlike Arthur's desperate, blaming message from the previous week, this email was concise, straightforward, and notably respectful. "Dr. Vance," it began simply. "Firstly, allow me to offer my sincere congratulations on your new position at Precision Systems. Your reputation precedes you. As you may have seen, I've been brought in by the board to help TechVantage navigate the current challenging situation and stabilize the company. To that end, I would like to formally open discussions regarding a fair and equitable licensing arrangement for your patented technology, which is, as we both know, integral to our AccountSphere product. TechVantage is prepared to publicly acknowledge your significant contributions as the inventor and make appropriate amends for the unfortunate oversights of previous management. Would you, or your legal representatives at Precision Systems, be available to meet early next week to begin this discussion in good faith? I read the email twice. It was the capitulation I had expected, delivered with a professionalism Arthur Sterling could never muster. I forwarded it immediately to Marcus Thorne, adding a simple, concise note. Phase 1 complete. They're ready to talk seriously. His reply came back within minutes. Beautifully executed, Ethan. Absolutely textbook. The board is ecstatic. Consider this your first major strategic victory for Precision Systems. Champagne is on ice. Looks like TechVantage, under new leadership, is finally learning an incredibly expensive but valuable lesson about truly valuing innovation and the innovators who drive it. 3 whirlwind months after my calculated departure from TechVantage, I found myself standing backstage, moments away from delivering the opening keynote address at the prestigious National Technology Innovation Conference. The main auditorium buzzed with anticipation, filled to capacity with industry leaders, venture capitalists, influential technology journalists, and legions of aspiring developers, many of whom I knew were now intimately familiar with my story. The tale of the overlooked veteran engineer who turned the tables on his dismissive employer had become something of a legend in Silicon Valley circles. And now, it is my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker, the conference organizer announced from the brightly lit stage, his voice amplified throughout the massive hall. A true pioneer whose work has fundamentally reshaped data handling across multiple industries. Please join me in welcoming the Chief Innovation Officer of Precision Systems, creator of the revolutionary distributed processing algorithm, Ethan Vance. The applause was substantial, a wave of sound washing over me as I walked confidently towards the podium, adjusting my tie. What a profound difference a few short, intense months could make. Just last year, I had attended this very same conference as part of the TechVantage delegation. Anonymous, relegated to a seat in the back rows, watching Arthur Sterling preen on stage, accepting accolades for my company's innovations, my algorithm, without so much as a nod in my direction. Today, I was the main event. Thank you, I began, scanning the sea of attentive faces, taking a moment to steady myself, the weight of the journey settling in. Thank you very much. I looked out at the diverse audience. Today, I want to talk about something fundamental, something crucial to the future of our industry, innovation ownership. And more importantly, the critical need for companies to properly, genuinely value intellectual contributions, regardless of the age, gender, or perceived rank of the contributor. My presentation delved into the technical intricacies and potential future applications of my algorithm, showcasing the advancements we were already making at Precision Systems. But I deliberately wove in broader themes, the vital importance of recognition, respect, and fostering a culture where experienced technologists are seen as invaluable assets, not burdens. Without ever mentioning TechVantage by name, I emphasized the stark difference between companies that protect and nurture their innovators and those that view them merely as replaceable resources on a balance sheet. The cautionary tale hung unspoken in the air, yet everyone understood the subtext. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Afterward, during the bustling networking reception, several young engineers, men and women, approached me, not just for selfies, but seeking genuine advice, mentorship. One young man, barely 30, confided earnestly, "To advance your story. It actually changed how I document my own work now. I started keeping meticulous personal logs of my development process, my ideas, everything, all on my own time, just in case." He looked almost embarrassed admitting it. "Smart," I replied, clapping him lightly on the shoulder. "Very smart. Your innovations, your intellectual contributions deserve that protection. Document everything. Own your value. As the evening began to wind down, I checked my phone and saw a new industry news alert had just popped up. TechVintage, under the guidance of Lawrence Bishop, had finally formally announced the finalized licensing agreement with Precision Systems as stipulated. The press release prominently acknowledged me, Dr. Ethan Vance, by name as the algorithm's original creator. Their stock price had stabilized, albeit at a significantly lower valuation than before my strategic exit. They had survived, but they were diminished. The price of their lesson. 1 year to the day. 12 months precisely since Cynthia Holloway had informed me my position was being restructured, effectively telling me to clean out my desk after 15 years. I sat in my spacious, sunlit Chief Innovation Officer's office at Precision Systems, reviewing the latest quarterly innovation report. The numbers were exceptional. Under my leadership, leveraging the enhanced algorithm and the brilliant team I'd brought with me, Precision Systems had successfully launched 3 groundbreaking software products. We were rapidly capturing significant market share, directly from TechVintage and other stunned competitors who hadn't seen the shift coming. A sharp, cheerful knock at my door interrupted my analysis. It was Marcus Thorne, holding a chilled bottle of vintage champagne and 2 crystal flutes, a wide grin splitting his face. "Happy anniversary, Ethan," he announced, setting the glasses down carefully on my desk. 1 year since you walked out of their door and into ours. And I have some news the board asked me to share with you personally before the official public announcement goes out tomorrow morning. He paused for dramatic effect, clearly savoring the moment. As of market close today, Precision Systems has officially surpassed TechVintage in total market valuation. For the first time in company history, we are number 1. I smiled, a deep, quiet satisfaction warming me from the inside out. Not triumph, not vengeful glee, but a profound sense of balance restored. "That's what happens, Marcus," I said, meeting his celebratory gaze, "when you value innovation and innovators properly." As Marcus expertly popped the cork and poured the bubbling champagne, my assistant Chloe entered, holding a sleek, expensive-looking envelope. Inside was a formal invitation. I was being invited to deliver the closing keynote speech at the prestigious Women in Technology Annual Leadership Summit, an interesting and welcome sign of changing perspectives. The proposed topic? Owning your intellectual value. How proper documentation and assertiveness changed an industry. "You've become something of an icon, you know," Marcus commented, noticing the invitation over my shoulder as he handed me a glass. The story. The cautionary tale about the executives who didn't recognize the value right under their noses until it walked out the door and beat them at their own game. It's apparently required reading in corporate boardrooms and MBA programs now. He mentioned that Lawrence Bishop, who had successfully navigated TechVintage through the crisis and remained as their permanent CEO, had implemented sweeping, systemic changes in how that company now recognized, rewarded, and legally protected innovation. Their new policies on intellectual property protection and inventor recognition were, according to industry chatter, reportedly modeled directly after the comprehensive program I had designed and implemented here at Precision Systems upon my arrival. Imitation, as they say, is the sincerest form of flattery. "It was never about revenge, Marcus," I said honestly, raising my glass in a toast. The champagne caught the afternoon light. "Not really. It was about recognition, about respect, about demonstrating unequivocally that innovation isn't some anonymous corporate byproduct." I looked out the window at the sprawling Silicon Valley landscape below. It comes from real people investing their lives, their intellect, people who deserve real credit, real protection, and real rewards for their contributions. The proper recognition, Marcus agreed wholeheartedly, clinking his glass firmly against mine. May the best ideas, and the brilliant minds behind them, always get their due. As the warm afternoon sun streamed through my office windows, illuminating the path ahead, I reflected on the long, often frustrating journey. At 56 years old, an age where many in my field felt increasingly marginalized, I had finally achieved what had eluded me for the majority of my career. Not just financial success, though that was certainly welcome, but something far more profound. Unequivocal acknowledgement. My name, Ethan Vance, was now permanently, irrevocably attached to the algorithm that had reshaped an industry. Exactly where it always belonged.